I made a sublimation wind spinner on one of my YouTube lives recently, and it turned out adorable. Now, I can't even show it to you because I gave it to my mother-in-law for Mother's Day. So in today's tutorial, we're going to use the same process, but I'm going to use a different design. So here's what I'll use for the project. I have some PYD Life sublimation paper. I have some butcher paper. I have some heat-resistant tape. I'm going to print out an image that I got on Creative Fabrica, and I'm going to print it onto my Epson EcoTank 15,000 printer. Now that printer isn't meant to be a sublimation printer, but when I bought it, I put Hippo sublimation ink into it instead of the ink that came with it. When it comes time to press my project, I'm going to use the HTV Auto Press 2 that you see right behind me. Now I have two sizes of sublimation wind spinners. I have an 8-inch size and I have a 10-inch size. For today's tutorial, I'm going to use the 8-inch size because not everybody has a printer that prints wider format. And if you're new here, I'm Marilyn. If you're returning, thanks so much for coming back. So let's start by taking a look at the wind spinners. I want to talk about a couple things, then we're going to print our design. So with the 8-inch wind spinner, when I took it out of its package, I could tell there was no protective coating on it. So there's nothing to peel off of this one. However, when I took the 10-inch one out, I could feel that there's a protective cover, and it's on both sides. So if you're doing wind spinners or any other type of sublimation project, check to make sure there's not a protective coating. If there is, you'll have to remove it. So let's see what size we need to print our design. If I measure widest to widest, which is probably here to here, or here to here, but let's check both of them. I'm going to start at the 1-inch mark, and it goes almost exactly to the 9-inch mark, so that means it's 8 inches. So you have your hangers at the top and bottom. You can hang multiples of these, that's why there's a loop at the top and the bottom. And when I check it, it is slightly under 8 inches. So we need a print that's at least 8 inches, and I'm going to do mine probably at about 8¼ inches. Also, if you're using a larger wind spinner, but you don't have a wide format printer, you're going to have to print your design on 2 sheets of paper and then either slightly overlap them or butt them up like that. If you do that, what I would recommend, because the important part is right here in the center, later, the rest of this gets bent and it's all broken up. So if I were doing a larger wind spinner and having to print it on 2 sheets of paper, I would make sure that the inside is all on 1 piece of paper. So you could probably print most of it like this and then the other part right over here. Because if you have a white line where it's not quite meeting up perfectly, you're not going to notice it nearly as much here where it'll get bent up later. Here's the wind spinner that I want to make today. It's this one on the right. I think these are beautiful, vivid colors. And there's something about this design that I really like. Let me show you what that is. I like that it has the full circle in it. Now, I don't think it would need these corners, but let me show you from the one I used the other day how some of these can cause a problem. Okay, here's the one that I made the other day. Notice that you have dips in it. And then this is really, really flat. Well, this doesn't necessarily match the same shape as all the wind spinners. And in my case, it really didn't at all. So if you have one that dips in like this, you might have to make it quite a bit larger for you not to have blank white space right here. So that's why I like the fact that this one is full. All right, let's go ahead and go to page setup, and it is on 8.5 by 11, so that's good. We can click out of that, but notice this is 12 by 12. So let's go ahead and go up here and let's change it to 8.25. Because I have the padlock on, the aspect ratio is locked, so when I hit the enter key, my height is going to change as well. Okay. So it fits all within my paper template, my canvas, and that is important. If it's off to the side like this, it's not going to print. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on there, And I wouldn't have to necessarily mirror this because there's no words or anything like that. But when I'm doing sublimation, I want it to look exactly like it looks on the screen once it's printed on my image. So with it selected, I'll go up to Object, Mirror, and I'll flip it horizontally. Now I'm ready to print. So I can either hit Command P on my computer, it's a Mac, or I can go right here and go to File, Print. Then I'm going to click on this print button. I need to change it to the correct printer. Then I'm going to go right here to Media and Quality. So I'm going to click on that to expand it. I have my paper loaded in the rear tray, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. For media type, I like to use this photo matte paper. That lays down a lot of ink, and it also changed the quality to best. I like using best quality when I do sublimation, but not everyone does, and they have great results too. Now that I have all my settings selected, I can just click on Print. When I was setting up my print, I forgot that I would need 2 copies, one for each side of the wind spinner. So after the first one printed out, I sent a second copy to print. Here's my 2 prints, and I gave them plenty of time to dry. There's one thing about sublimation, it does not like moisture. So you want to make sure that your prints are thoroughly dried, and if you clean your blank with rubbing alcohol, something like that, you want to make sure that your blank is dry. So let's go ahead and start with one side. Now I have seen someone where they press both sides at one time. I am not comfortable with that, so I'm going to go ahead and press them one at a time. And on this design, I can see the bottom center and the top center because it's divided by that black line. So that's going to help me line this up. So I'm just going to center mine in this circle. I think that looks good. So I'll add a couple pieces of tape. And the tape really has 2 functions for me. Hold it in place as I get it to my heat press. And then second of all, when the heat press rises, when the top platen comes up, I don't want the paper to bounce up at all, because if it bounces up and then comes down in a different place, it can cause that blurring effect because it's still very hot and it might actually continue to sublimate when it comes down in a different position. And so having tape helps keep that from happening. Now notice there is a ton of ink that could get on the bottom plate of my heat press. So we're going to press it like that, and if I don't put something under it, all this ink is going to get on the pad of my heat press, and I don't want that. So I'm going to put actually 2 pieces of butcher paper under it, and then I will put 1 piece on top of it. Now also, before I do that, I'm going to cut away some of this excess ink. This really isn't necessary, it's just I'm going to have less ink getting on my butcher paper if I cut the excess off. Now I'm going to press this at 390 degrees for 55 seconds. And I want to make sure that the paper side is up. Also remember, I'm going to have 2 pieces of butcher paper under it and 1 on top of it. I also like to try to have my things that I'm pressing in the middle of my heat press. I think it gets better even pressure that way. Now this is going to be really hot coming out, so it's a good idea to wear your heat resistant gloves now. Now, even though I'm impatient, I am going to let this cool down some. And the reason is that if I move that sublimation paper while the blank is still really hot enough to sublimate, I could cause that blurring effect. Okay, I think that is fine. It's still decently hot, but it's not so hot that it's going to sublimate. So, notice, look at all that ink. And I can reuse this piece. None of it came through to this. So let's just throw that away. And then let me get my tape loose. And beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I love that. Now notice there's quite a bit of ink left on this. Quite a bit. I don't get too concerned about how much ink is left. As long as it looks good here, I'm happy. And I think that looks great. All right, so now it's time to do the other side. So let's just flip this over. Now, you do need to pay attention to which was the top and which was the bottom. You have your little circles that you hang it by at the top and the bottom. So the top of my tree is up here. So when I put this other one down, I need to make sure that the top of the tree is up there also. That way when it spins, it looks right. Okay, let me go ahead and set that down. And just like the last time, I'm going to line up the little hole with this black line and this black line. And notice I went ahead and cut my paper down this time before I even taped it on. Since we've already been through this process once, I'm going to fast forward through this and voice over it. Like last time, I'm adding some tape to hold the paper to the wind spinner. And then I just folded that tape to the back side. With 2 pieces of butcher paper under it and 1 on top of it, I'm pressing it at 390 degrees Fahrenheit for 55 seconds. I let it cool down for a couple of minutes and then remove the paper. And this side turned out beautiful as well. Now, this hardware, you press this in, and it's kind of hard to do, but you press that in, and then you just put it through that circle. The little hole right there. And again, there's a hole at both ends, so if you want to string some of these, you can do that. You can have multiples. So let me go ahead and do this. And what that does is it allows it to rotate freely. Okay, let's go ahead and start bending. So the way I like to do it is I like to bend from the top and the bottom, not pulling so much here, but bending where the metal is connected still. So I'm just going to kind of put it down and press down with these 2 fingers and then pull up with my thumbs. And it's really easy to do. But the question to me always is, how much do I bend it? Okay, let's get this last piece. And I think that's acceptable. So now I need to do the other side in the opposite direction. So on these, I'm going to hold down with my thumbs and pull up with my fingers. And it's really personal taste on how much you want it to be bent. So here's the final project, and I think it turned out great. I love it when it spins. I just love that effect. It's kind of mesmerizing. So now it's time to find its rightful place in the backyard.